Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions, and this is going to be part 6 for Ascendance of a Bookworm reading. Okay. Learning to respect Egyptian culture. Now, despite resolving to make my own books, no matter what, I couldn't manage to procure paper. My Japanese spirit suggested that I go to a department store and buy 500 sheets of copier paper for 200 yen, but in this world, a month of my dad's wages would disappear buying a single sheet of parchment. Dang! Expensive! To make a sheet of parchment, one would have to peel the skin off an animal, shave off the fur, and then cut the animal-shaped skin into easy-to-use rectangles. The sheet of parchment I saw at Dad's workplace was about the size of an A4 piece of paper. No matter how I cut it, I'd get about 5 to 8 smaller sheets of paper at best. In other words, parchment was so expensive that a poor commoner such as myself would never be able to buy a book's worth of it. To sum things up, before I could make books, I needed to learn to make paper. But the only real experience I had with making paper was recycling milk cartons. Everything else I had just read about in books. You would think learning something from a book would be enough to just do it, right? But think hard about this, and you realize that things really aren't that simple. As far as I knew, there was no machine in this world for making paper. With no machine, I had to do all the paper-making work by hand. And yet I was a sickly girl as weak as a 3-year-old. There was little I could do on my own. The first step toward making paper was wood, and that alone was already a big hurdle for me. In conclusion, it was impossible for me, but it was also too soon to give up. Since records were important both economically and politically, Earth had a very extensive recorded history. Records were kept for millennia, but it was only recently that humans developed machines for making paper. In short, the further back in history we went, the more likely it was that I would be able to recreate the methods used for recording information. What do civilizations without machines do? I opened my hands as wide as possible and glared at my palms. Ancient civilizations. You can't talk about civilized ancient cultures without mentioning Egypt. And you can't talk about Egypt without mentioning papyrus. Long live Egypt! Though connecting the dots in my existing memories, I realized that I can make faux papyrus with Egypt as my guide. It was invented in a society about as technologically advanced as the one I was in, so perhaps even my small hands would be enough to make it. It was made using some kind of plant. It wasn't sure which, but I think it was just like made from the fibers of extremely straight trees and plants. Or something. This world had plants too. I bet if I went to the forest, it'd be filled with plants perfect for making into paper. Okay, the forest. Let's go to the forest. I'm a woman who was both admired and lamented by my family and friends for how fast my work became when books were involved. I act the moment a thought comes to me. In this case, I immediately asked Tuli to take me with her to the forest. Tuli, I want to go to the forest too. Can I come with... What? No! You mind? No way! She shut me down before I even finished. Her reaction spade indicated she didn't even need to think about her answer, and the force of her "no way" probably reflected that she wouldn't budge no matter what I said. Ouch. Why not? You can't walk that far, can you? There's no way you could walk to the forest if you can't even make it to the gate. And once we get to the forest, we need to pick up firewood and gather fruit. There's no time to rest. Plus, you can't climb trees. Could you walk home carrying a lot of heavy stuff while tired? We need to make it back before the gate closes so you couldn't rest no matter how tired you got. See? There's no way you can go to the forest. Tuli rattled off all the reasons I couldn't go to the forest, one by one, counting on her fingers. There were a lot of reasons, but they could all be summed up as, you're too weak. Plus, winter's coming soon, so there's less stuff there. According to Tuli, it was likely that I would exhaust myself reaching the forest, and then find nothing there I wanted. That would definitely be tough. Or rough. I either had to go to the forest, accepting it might be fruitless, or give up on making paper. There was no easy way out. What do you want? I don't think there are many marrows left. Tuli tilted her head as she thought hard about it. As minerals were the main ingredient of my simple all-in-one shampoo, we were using all of them for oil without eating any. We would then use the oil to moisturize our hair every now and again. I did appreciate all the minerals, but I cared more about books than my looks. I needed plant fibers in order to make my faux pulpris. Are there any plants with easily removed fibers? Huh? What? Tuli gave me a confused look. Something I said there had definitely been in Japanese. I thought and tried to come up with a simpler way of saying that. Is there a plant with really straight, thick stems? I just want the stems. Tuli put a hand on her head and thought about my question. Did it ring any bells? I waited patiently for her answer. After a brief pause, Tuli shrugged. I know. I'll just help Ralph and Lutz out. What? You help them? Not get them to help me? Or get them to help us? I told her my head in confusion was surprised Tuli for some reason. After blinking multiple times, she said, Haven't we talked about this before? Ralph's family raises chickens, so they need lots of animal feed to last the winter, remember? No, I don't remember. Tuli sounded like she was saying things I should know, so I replied, That's true, while hiding my ignorance. So I was thinking I would try asking them for stems if I helped them gather the plants and stuff. But the season where lots of plants grow is already over, so I don't think there'll be many. That's fine, thanks, Tuli. Just like always, Tuli's being a great older sister. I'm so lucky to have her. The next day, I went with Tuli down the stairs and tried asking Ralph and Lutz for help. Thankfully, they accepted, but I couldn't leave everything to other people. I went on my own quest for plants. Luckily, there were plants growing by the well outside from the paved part. Maybe I could use those stems. Mom, I'll go with you to the well. Oh my, do you want to help? Nuh-uh, not that. I want to gather plants. I showed her the small basket Tuli had made earlier. Okay, do your best. I had straight up declined to help her, but Mom still let me go with her, excited that I was healthy enough to be moving around. I climbed down the stairs again, this time with Mom carrying a bunch of laundry. As that was my third time climbing down the stairs, I naturally ended up out of breath by the time I reached the bottom, which left me in no condition to be hunting for plants. I rested next to Mom as she drew water from the well and rubbed our clothes with strong-smelling animal soap that produced no bubbles whatsoever. Tuli was right. If I didn't get stronger somehow, I'd never make it to the forest no matter how much I wanted plants from there. Isn't there any way to get this body a little stronger? My, if it isn't little mine. Good morning, I said. I didn't recognize her, but a middle-aged woman named Carla called out to us, sounding friendly. Oh, hello, Carla. Morning. You're up early. Mom smiled back and continued the conversation as this was definitely someone mine knew. But who? I searched my memories, making sure not to make it obvious I didn't recognize her. Indeed, it was someone I knew. My memories told me it was Ralph and Lutz's mother. She was a somewhat, sizable woman that seemed more or less dependable. Should I say something like, Thanks for always taking care of me? No, a 5-year-old child would never say that. What kind of conversations do friendly middle-aged women have with neighborhood children? Someone help me! Carla began easily drawing water from the well and washing her clothes without looking at me despite my spinning thoughts. As expected, she used that stinky animal soap. Are you feeling well today? It's rare to see you outside. I'm getting plants. Ralph and Liz said they needed them for your birds. My, you're doing that for us? Sorry for the trouble. Carla responded lightly enough that it was clear she didn't feel particularly sorry. The band of neighborhood moms, mine included, talked amongst themselves without stopping. Their hands never stopped no matter who was talking. It was really impressive. Seriously, though, the soap really did smell bad. I felt sick just resting near it. I wonder if it'd get better if I used some smell-blocking herbs, or maybe the smells would combine and make something worse. Oh God, that would be worse. While thinking up a countermeasure to the awful smell, I stood up to escape it and began pulling up some nearby plants. I wanted to pull out the thick-stemmed plants with firm-looking fibers, but I wasn't strong enough to pull them out on my own. I can't do this with my bare hands. Someone bring me a sickle. Of course, nobody will bring me a sickle, and my weak arms weren't going to get stronger in a day. Okay, I give up. I'll put all my hopes on Tuli, Ralph, and Lutz. I quickly gave up on pulling plants from my own knees, instead selected them with those with soft-looking leaves and sprouts for the chickens. They were easy enough for me to pull, despite my weakness. Mine, it's time to go home. Mom finished the laundry pretty fast. She called for me, holding the tightly packed tub of laundry. I had only filled up about half of the small basket, but Mom had work today, so I couldn't ask her to stay. I went home carrying the tiny basket. Ready? All right, let's go. Okay, I had been sick ever since becoming mine, with Mom taking days off from me and such, so I didn't know that when I was healthy, she would send me to a neighborhood babysitter for the day. Makes sense. Tuli can't go to the forest when I'm at home. Mine, be a good girl while I'm at work. She'll be in your care, Gerda. Yes, come now, Mine. Gerda, the babysitter, was watching over several children other than me. Most of them were toddlers who were just old enough to walk on their own a little. In this city, once a child passed the age of 3 and grew stronger, they'd go with their older siblings to the forest or otherwise be old enough to help around the house and be left at home. In other words, my family trusted me so little I was the same age as a toddler who couldn't be left home alone. What's that supposed to mean? As I stood shocked by my family's lack of faith in me, I saw a young boy pick up a toy off the floor and start putting it into his mouth. Beside him, another boy smacked a little girl, making her cry. Hey, that's dirty. You'll get sick if you put that in your mouth. My, don't smack people for no reason. Why would you do that? Oh dear. Eyes and oh dears. Do your job, Miss Gerda. Despite how I was another child being babysat, I was the largest kid around, and they ended up taking care of everyone else. While putting small children to sleep, I thought about how to make faux potpourri with the soon-to-be-delivered stems. Honestly, I don't remember the proper method for making potpourri. I mean, it never came up on my test, so how can you blame me? Anyway, I remembered reading that potpourri is surprisingly stiff. It was made by placing plant fibers vertically and horizontally together, like a quilt. But you could only really write well on one side, since the towels or fibers are horizontal on the front and vertical on the back. There was a warning that it wasn't very bendable either, but the book naturally hadn't mentioned how to actually make potpourri itself. The main problem was that, despite having seen pictures of it, I couldn't think of a single way to make potpourri. I got the feeling that the fibers were lined up right next to each other, but I couldn't think of how to get them to stick together. Does it need sticky plant starch like washi does? Or maybe there's some special way to put it together. I thought back to the history book I had read and tried to wring out any useful information I could, despite how few important details it contained. For now, I figured the best thing to do was take the fibers from the hardest-looking stems and try weaving them together in a plaid-like pattern. That should make usable paper, even without some kind of glue to stick them together. As long as I can write letters on it, I'll be fine. Mine, Tuli's here for you. Tuli! Tuli came to get me that evening after returning from the forest. I'm saved! Thank goodness she came to get me. Overjoyed, I clung to her. Gerda's style of babysitting hadn't been to take care of the kids, but rather to leave them on their own unless things got dangerous. If they peed themselves, she wiped them with a wet cloth, and that was it. The room smelled of waste. It was hard for me to bear watching kids get treated like that, especially if my Japanese value is still intact. Can't believe she's getting paid doing this. The worst thing was, no matter how much I wanted to help, it was a problem too big for my hands. I couldn't babysit children myself, and Gerda's style of babysitting may be normal for this world. People might end up considering me the weird one if I complained too much. I had spent all my time waiting desperately for someone to come and get me, wanting to escape the horrid conditions as soon as possible. Did you get lonely, Mine? I guess it has been a long time since you stayed here. You could go with us to the forest if you were just a little bit stronger. Hope you can come with us by the next spring comes, Mine. As Tuli patted my head and both Lutz and Ralph consoled me, I realized that I absolutely did have to get stronger no matter what. I needed to take it seriously. Being this weak was causing me nothing but problems. Oh, right, we got those plant stems you wanted. Ralph grabbed some of the stems from his basket and showed me. And when I saw them, everything about Gerda vanished from my mind. Books were more important than her, and paper meant books. That's a lot, thanks. I gathered some plants for you at the well, too. I puffed out my cheek of pride. Just surprised, but for some reason all three of them just patted my head. Not only that, but Lutz even said you did good, with a warm smile while looking down at me. Just how useless do people think I am? I mean, it's true I never do anything, and I'm useless almost all the time, but still. Tuli went and got the tiny basket so we would exchange all our plants for the stems they gathered. Okay, it's time to make some faux potpourri. Winter preparations. I intended to immediately start making faux potpourri with the gathered stems, but unfortunately life got in the way. Just where do you think you're going, Mine? Didn't I tell you that we were starting winter preparations today? Right as I was about to leave to go to the well and get the fibers out of the plant stems, Mom grabbed the back of my shirt and stopped me. Apparently, snowfall was about to lock us inside, and we needed to prepare for the long upcoming winter. But why do I need to help when I'm so useless? No matter how much I scoured Mine's memories, all I got were memories of her catching colds and just being around, lazing around, being useless. Basically, to say it again, I was completely useless. The best thing I could do was not get sick and end up in bed all day. You're helping me today, Mine. Come on. What about work, Dad? I have a few days off. We workers gotta take turns staying at home from work if any of us want to finish preparing, yeah? Wow, jobs are nice enough to give time off for winter preparation? I didn't expect to see that kind of working class benefit in this world. Or maybe winter preparations are just so rough that they're impossible without a man around the house. It was rare for Dad to be at home and spend a lot of quality time with me. As you might expect from his occupation as a soldier, he was more of a meathead than anything, and generally spent his time with Tuli, who was healthy enough that he could take her places without worrying. But now that everyone was home, I had no opportunity to escape, and since Dad had specifically requested my help, I had no choice but to give up and obey. What do we need to do? Dad answered while squatting in front of a window and preparing what looked like carpenter tools. Today we're going to check and see if anything needs fixing. The shutters will be locked tight during snowstorms, so we need to make sure none of the hinges are loose or rusted. While we're at it, we'll look for holes. Once we're done with that, we'll clean the chimneys and furnace so we can use them without issue over the winter. Dad, what are you expecting from my weak little arms that can't hold anything or even use a screwdriver? I understood what we needed to do, but even then, I couldn't imagine that I would be helpful at all. Oh, maybe if I tried super hard and showed that I could be useful, or get helpful, my family's faith in me would go up a little. It should be simple to find rusted or loose hinges with my modern knowledge. Dad, this hinge and its nails are rusted. These will last. I'm pretty sure they're like on the verge of breaking off. They're a mess. I briefly considered whether or not I should trust Dad. It'd be a big problem if the window door meant to block a snowstorm broke during the middle of winter. I stood on a chair and tried shaking the window door a little. If nothing happened, I could trust Dad. But if it broke, then he should learn to trust me. After shaking the door a few times, the hinge loudly snapped in two. Yep, there we go. She was right. And I don't even think she probably shaked it even very much because she's so weak. She probably didn't shake it very much. I nodded to myself since that was what I had expected, but Dad paled and stared at the shaking door with wide eyes. Mine, why did you do that? See, it broke. I told you it wouldn't last all winter. Now, Dad, fix it. I pointed at the window door, and Dad, ignoring his mistaken judgment, lifted me off the chair while sighing. Mine, go help, Alpha. What? But I'm helping you, Dad. We need to make sure all the hinges won't break during winter, but you're ignoring the really bad ones. I shrugged and shook my head. Mom told me to help Dad, and so I would. This was all for the sake of making my winter as comfortable as possible. We don't have the money to fix all of them, and at this rate, you'll break all of them. Go help Eva. No! Money is a problem here, too? I, having destroyed the hinge that Dad intended to treasure for a little longer, obediently followed his instructions and went to the bedroom where Mom and Tuli were. They were drying our sheets and blankets to make them more usable, moving our bed to the wall closer to the furnace to make nights a little warmer, and just setting up the room to be more livable in the winter. What's wrong, Mine? Dad told me to come help you, Mom. Really? We're just about finished here, so we're about to start preparing the lights. We luckily ended up with the extra beeswax this year. We're also going to use beef tallow and fruits to make candles and oil for lamps. That all sounded like a real pain. I had been smelling the nasty smell of animal oil wafting from nearby homes for several days, and just imagining smelling the same stink from my own kitchen made me depressed. Tuli started working on extracting oil from fruits, but since I was too weak to wield the hammer well, I had no excuse. I had no excuse. I could only watch beside Mom as she put beef tallow into our largest pot and set it over the fire. It stinks. It's so bad. Stay strong, me. Despite the smell being so bad I could barely breathe, Mom casually melted the tallow and picked up the drags that rose to the surface. Surprisingly, however, that was all she did before starting to finish up. Wait, Mom, that's not all. That's all? You're not going to salt it out? Huh? Come again? Oh no, I guess this is obvious, but salted out didn't get translated. Mom shot me a little glare that said, Are you complaining about my work? But I swallowed my fear and tried to explain what salting out was in as simple terminology as possible. You put salt water in and then boil it a bit more to get more junk out. Salt water? Uh-huh. If you leave it for a bit afterwards, the salt will harden on top and leave just the salt water on bottom, right? You can pour out the water and then just use the pure oil. It's a bit more work, but the oil will smell better and be high quality. As if reacting to the phrase higher quality, Mom began salting the oil out. The quality of oil we make here was a matter of life or death for me. After all, we'd be using the oil in a closed room. I wouldn't be able to survive a stinky home for an entire winter. Well, I couldn't tell her exactly what ratio of salt water to oil is best, but it should still end up better. We went with the pretty arbitrary ratio, but thanks to the salting, the yellow tallow became a pure white. The tallow was then split into parts, some to be used for candles and some to be used for soap come spring. The candle part was put back into the pot and melted again. As an aside, the tiny chunks of meat that came out after filtering the tallow was used as a pretty tasty soup base. Yum yum! After eating lunch, we got to work making candles. Okay, Thule, I want you to start making candles now. Gunter and I need to prepare the firewood. Okay. Wait, what's my job? All three of them started their own jobs, so after a moment's thought, I followed Mom out the front door. Maybe go help your mother included this, but after noticing me, Mom told me to go back inside. Mine help Thule make candles. Be sure not to get in the way. Okay. Sheesh, why do they trust me so little? Well, you're kind of, weak right now, Mine. You can't really do much, so they kind of can't trust you right now. I returned to the kitchen and saw Thule cutting strings into identical lengths and hanging several of them at a time from little sticks. She then took a stick and held it such that the strings dipped into the pot of melted tallow before lifting it up and down. Over time, the oil sticking to the strings hardened, fattened, and began looking like a candle. Wow, so that's how you make candles. Don't just watch, Mine. Help! Thule was mad, so in order to help, I grabbed some smell-blocking herbs and stuck them to some of the hardening candles. If these worked, I would bit more herbs into all of them. Mine, don't play around. Just these, okay? Don't you want candles that don't stink too, Thule? Please? Definitely just these. Understood? Thule drove that home, so I gave a big nod. I didn't know whether it would work or not, so I had no intention of messing with all of them. I put different herbs into each candle so I would be able to see which one worked the best. While Thule and I made candles, our parents were preparing firewood. Without it, we would undoubtedly freeze to death, so making sure we had enough ready was absolutely vital. Dad took both the wood Thule had picked, plus extra wood we bought, and used an axe to chop it all into 50-centimeter long sticks. Mom then took the cut firewood and brought it to the winter storeroom. Where are you going, Mom? I was so surprised to see Mom going into a room I didn't know about that I followed after her. It was news to me, but there was another room inside our normal storage room. Apparently it was generally only used for winter preparations. About half the room was already packed with tons of firewood. What? I didn't know about this room. It's our winter storeroom, remember? How could you even forget that, Mine? Speaking of which, I had been wondering where Thule put all the wood she came back with. Now I knew. Since the wood we normally use was put into the general storage room, I never noticed there was another one deeper inside. It's cold here. Of course it is. This room is the furthest from the hearth. Our home didn't have anything fancy like a fireplace, so the hearth/makeshift oven in the kitchen was the only source of heat in the entire house. We would generally spend all our time there. And now our beds were pressed against the singular wall separating them from the hearth. As long as fire was burning inside, which was when we children went to bed, it was surprisingly warm. But it was only warm at the start. Mom would put out the fire before bed so the room was ice cold in the morning. On the other hand, this winter storeroom was the furthest room from the house from the hearth, so it was super cold. It was the perfect place to put preserved food, oil, and other things we'd need for the winter. In other words, it was a natural fridge, and we didn't want it getting warm. There's lots of firewood here. It's still barely enough, you know, even though half the room's full. I looked at all the firewood stacked in the winter storeroom, and the word deforestation passed through my mind. If a single family burned this much wood, how much wood was the entire city using? Mine, don't start daydreaming. It's time to prepare for our winter handiwork. I'm not daydreaming, I protested, but Mom was already heading to the kitchen. I hurriedly chased after her. I didn't want to be left alone in a dark room with no windows. Mom, what do you mean by handiwork? Well, men fix the tools they use at work, I suppose. If we intend to make new tools or furniture, we need to gather the materials ahead of time. So it's like work we do over the winter while stuck inside. Makes sense considering they don't have any kind of technology, so otherwise they need something to do during the day. Mom nodded while counting how many spools of thread we had. That's right. It's important that we women make clothes, remember? We won't be able to do that without preparing thread and dyeing cloth ahead of time. I've already finished all that since I work as a dyer, but we still need to prepare the wool and plants like nylon that we'll be weaving next year. Huh? Not to mention, Tuli's baptism is next summer. I need to prepare her special dress during the winter. Mom looked around with a deadly serious expression, making sure she had everything she needed. I got the feeling that I would just get in the way no matter what, so I slid back over to where Tuli was. What's your winter handiwork gonna be, Tuli? I'm gonna make baskets. We'll sell them when spring comes. Tuli was preparing her basket-making materials, which would serve as her handiwork. She was taking some of the wood she gathered to the forest and peeling off its bark. She would then run her knife along the fibers to split the wood apart. What'll you be doing, mine? I'm making faux papery. What's that? It's a secret. I followed Tuli's example and started preparing the fibers I needed for my winter handiwork, making faux papyrus. This was an important job for me, a respectable job that nobody would get mad at me for doing. To get the fibers out, I basically just had to do what Tuli was doing probably. Peel off the outer layer of the stems, soak them in water, then dry them. Winter preparation began before Tuli and the others could get too many stems, so I decided to just take them all apart for fiber. Tuli, I want some water too. Okay? Tuli, how do you think I could get just the fiber out of these stems? What? Tuli, they won't get blown away if I dry them in the windows, right? I bundled up the completed fiber. There weren't many of them, but there was probably enough to make 1 or 2 sheets of faux papyrus. With that, my own winter preparations were more or less finished. Whew, I worked really hard here. Wait, what? Is it just me, or does Tuli look annoyed? Okay, hang on, let me... Dang. I went through 14 pages. Okay, I think I'll end this part here. I'll see you guys next time.